In the book Edgelands, Journeys into England's True Wilderness, poets Paul Farley and Michael Simmons Roberts make a plea for people to put aside our nostalgia for places we've never really known and see them afresh when we speak about the hollows and spaces between our towns, cities, and the nature reserves with nicely maintained car parks and picnicking areas. These are the places we pass through quickly on our way elsewhere, to work, to home, to recreation, somewhere to relax or engage in leisure in spaces that have been designed to satisfy our desires and remove the need to spend too long outdoors in places that could be dirty, unsafe, or offer little in the way of diversion and entertainment. Many of these spaces are sites of former industry, the communities surrounding them, and even civilizations that now only exist in history books and outlines left behind of their buildings and settlements. These places are discarded, forgotten, and serve only as a border to the spaces people would rather be. What I want to know is what happens in these places once we've passed through them. Is there a way to understand the beauty and resilience of these edgeland spaces and perhaps gain a new perspective so that we can truly see them afresh? The Japanese practice of shirin-yoku, or forest bathing, is something that emerged as a response to the stressful and hectic lives of Japanese workers and their increasing reliance on technology in the 1980s, and has undergone a resurgence in the Western world, thanks in part to the COVID-19 pandemic, during which people became aware of the importance of maintaining and boosting their immunity against a physical virus, as well as against the effects of a global crisis, creating insecurity, anxiety, isolation, and a trauma that has not been felt on such a huge and universal scale in generations. Shirin-yoku involves becoming immersed in nature and listening to the sounds, smelling the odours, and letting the atmosphere fully envelop you without technology providing any distractions. Ironically, the internet was instrumental in popularising the practice, with articles, studies, and guides on how we can engage in the practice effectively, along with information about local sites and tours and the benefits it can have on your physical, mental, and emotional well-being. However, once the initial threat of COVID-19 diminished thanks to greater awareness of hygiene and development of a series of vaccines, people started going back to work, shops and leisure facilities reopened, and we started to become busy and distracted again. In a post-COVID world, can we still benefit from shirin-yoku, but in a way to open our eyes to our surroundings and help us to rebuild our relationship with the world outside of ourselves? My research project seeks to re-engage with the outdoors and continue to bathe in its atmosphere, but as I've also returned to full-time work and my only free time is now in the evenings and weekends, I want to find a way to do it within my schedule and in a way that allows me to engage with and appreciate environments in my local area. As I live in a post-industrial area, my environments are often made up of edgelands in various stages of abandonment or redevelopment. They're a far cry from the idyllic green and pristine views in National Geographic or pushed to our For You pages on social media. Many of these places are often forgotten or thought of as liminal spaces without importance, but they are the only way of accessing the outdoors for many people in my local area. It is easy to make comparisons between the overgrown and unkempt land and the idealised, Instagrammable, algorithmically pleasing vistas that are out of reach in a physical and financial sense for most of us, and only viewable as high-resolution, vibrant and carefully crafted digital representations. So what do the rest of us do? Are we allowed to find beauty in our environments too? For this project, I want to use materials that I already own, both to reduce the cost of the project and in keeping with the concept of documenting forgotten, unused or spare places. This project uses 35mm film canisters, which I use to make small pinhole cameras that I put up and leave for a period of time to bear witness to what happens in an area when we're no longer viewing it for ourselves. I decided to use pinhole cameras because they're a basic, primitive and untamed method of photography. These spaces are often considered primitive and untamed themselves. You never know quite how an image will turn out, in much the same way that a wild abandoned space can take on a life and features of its own. My cameras are made from entirely reclaimed and discarded materials to capture a length of time in the life of reclaimed and discarded landscapes, and I want to explore whether these places still have value despite no longer serving their intended purpose and either being left to ruin or potentially manicured into something more palatable later down the way. Once my cameras are constructed, I take them into the outdoors and I place them on trees, hedges, fence posts and leave them for between 1 and 6 weeks. and as of the present moment, some have been exposing for almost 3 months. Over a long period of time, an image becomes burnt into the paper. As the exposure time is so long, there's no need to use a chemical developers to bring out the image. All you need is a camera, a mobile phone, or better yet, a scanner and software that lets you invert the paper negative to see what impression has been left by the various objects and light projected through the pinhole. Just as Hashimoto Sugimoto was able to use long exposures to capture the entire feature-length film in one image, I'm trying to capture a week, a month, or even longer period of time in the life of the spaces in which I place my cameras. As time passes and light leaves its impression on the paper, can we get an idea of how the space exists while life continues within, around, and despite it?
Yep.
Oh, poop.
Yep.
Not every camera makes it to the end of its exposure time, and some I find far away or not at all. Some are not even the same position as where they originally placed, and some have been turned round or obscured. I don't mind these losses, and any image that I'm able to pull still gives me an impression of that area. If a camera is missing, I hope that whoever finds it wonders what it is for and looks into it. And for those that are vandalised or tampered with, it does give me more an idea of what goes on in these places as time passes. Life will continue regardless of whether we are there in person to observe, just as time will pass despite our desire to stop it using modern photographic techniques. If I can't be there in person, I can let the camera be my witness, and I'd far rather the camera come into harm than me. As well as not using anything new, I'm keen to keep this project as sustainable as possible, as well as create work that celebrates and encourages resilience and resourcefulness. Each location is within walking distance of my home, or within easy walking distance of public transport stops and interchanges. This project is focused on using already existing resources and making do, so I'm trying to reflect that with my working practices. Anything I do purchase for this project will have another use or be a byproduct of day-to-day living. My project aims to uphold and respect economical, cultural and social sustainability through my choices and methods of working. I have constructed my cameras by hand and will undertake all digitisation and presentation myself. This will reduce the cost of the project, the number of resources I use, and any potential pollutants produced in the transport, production and disposal of materials. When I present the final work, I plan to use social media and my professional website, as well as creating an ebook that will be available at no cost to anybody who wishes to view the work. I've been thinking about other ways to present the work as well, such as using projections in dark spaces or within the areas that I visit. So moving forwards, I wish to spend some time planning and testing ways I can do this sustainably, safely, and that makes sense within the context of my project.